Hello everyone, and good evening to all of you present here. A very warm welcome to all of you who has joined us here now for the session. As you all are aware, we have a very special guest today with here. She is none other than Meghna Bhatia. She is a psychiatric assistant and intern administrator at Bhartiya Arogya Nidhi Hospital. Now, in our life, in our day to day journey, we all experience stress, burnout due to so much of competition increasing in almost every part of our journey, be it college, be it studies, be it anything else. So, today we learn how we can cope that stress and how we can overcome and get more confidence. So, over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for attending the session. The session is set to be extremely fun and interactive, and we'll be back with a lot of science based strategies to help cope with stress. We will be playing a few activities. I am really excited to hear you participate and respond. Okay, I will be sharing my screen now. Please let me know if you're able to see it. All right. So, is everyone able to see the screen?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
All right. So, thank you for such a nice welcome. A little bit about me. I am Meghna Bhatia, and I am currently working at Bharatiya Arogya Nidhi Hospital. I have completed my BA and my PGD in psychology from Flame University. So, today's session, the purpose of this is specifically to understand stress and how it affects the brain. We will also be looking into concentration, procrastination, anxiety, motivation dips, and the effects of stress on the body by looking at the physical symptoms involved with the biological aspects. And finally, how to deal with stress. What are the strategies? What are the coping mechanisms? What can we actually do to deal with these things? So let us start with, why do we feel stress? What is this feeling? Where is it coming from? And what about this feeling is making it appear in physical symptoms? Looking at this straightforward definition from Harvard, we can see that stress is defined as a transactional process arising from real or perceived environmental demands that can be appraised as threatening or benign, depending on the availability of adaptive coping resources to an individual. Now, this can be a little scientific and can make it a little difficult to actually understand stress. So, I will be explaining it through a small story. Let us imagine that we are in a car, all right, and we are on a long, round, winding road in the mountains, and all of a sudden, there are 100 goats in front of us. In this case, you, the driver, is represented as the amygdala. The amygdala is the command center of the brain. It is the one that notifies the threats that are happening around us and sounds the red alert. The red alert signal specifically mainly goes to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus in the story would be the dashboard. The hypothalamus in the brain also is the one that decides what kind of a system and what kind of a reaction the body is going to be giving to that threat. In this case, as we are seeing 100 goats on the road, the hypothalamus has decided that the sympathetic nervous system must be activated, which is the gas pedal. The sympathetic nervous system is the one that causes the rush in your body. It is the one that activates your muscles, activates your senses, increases your heartbeat, makes your breathing rapid. It is the one that boosts your body to actually fight the threat physically and mentally. We can see that this is also represented by the adrenaline in the adrenal glands. In this case, it would be putting the car into sports mode. It is deciding that the car is going to be experiencing rough terrain. It is going to be experiencing high speed, a lot of maneuvering. It has decided that we need the push, we need the rush to get into it. Now, at this point, we have crossed about 40 goats. We still have 60 goats left. That means the threat is persisting. Adrenaline is the one that gives you the initial rush, the initial push towards that actual threat. But the one that actually continues that active motivation to fight the threat is the cortisol, which is from the pituitary gland. At this point, the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis, is activated. Cortisol is being released into the bloodstream. Your car is in high alert mode. We are maneuvering through all the goats, all of them. We have about 30 goats left. We're going through all of them. And the high alert mode is making sure that you are alert through the whole stretch. Once the amygdala decides that the goats are gone, that we have completed all the 100 goats, we have passed through the threat, we are in the safe zone. The hypothalamus realizes that the red alert is off and then activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which in this case would be the brake pedal. The brake pedal is specifically to calm the car down. It reduces the sports mode, it removes the adrenaline, it removes the cortisol, the car relaxes. The car is no longer going in stress. Your heart rate goes down, your breathing calms down, your sweating, it calms down. Your body is now in relaxed mode. Once this has occurred, your amygdala can be clearly seen to have been calm as compared to the way it was earlier, which was alert. Our amygdala tends to view exams and study pressure as a high level threat, equal to more than 100 goats on the road, causing the body to then react with such symptoms of high, high heart rate, rapid breathing, often causing panic attacks and anxiety attacks. Now, one of the most strong misconceptions that I have noticed is everyone else struggling? Is everyone else struggling? Is a student who is one person the only person struggling? What we tend to see is pluralistic ignorance. Pluralistic ignorance is when we believe that our private views are very different from those of the majority. Many times we believe that the stress we are experiencing is something that others don't tend to experience. We are struggling, but I can see that my friends are not. But thinking about it, in our childhood, how many times have we said that we've barely studied when we took the whole night to study? How many times have we been scared to submit the exam paper first to the invigilator, thinking that we took lesser time than the other? My meme over here clearly shows that we often think that the person taking an extra sheet is writing much, much more than us, is having so much more information that I am clearly not writing. But the reality could very much be that the answer was wrong and the entire page got scrapped, and you needed an extra page just to write that. We often think that these are wrong, but to create a little bit of sense that we are actually experiencing similar things, we will play a small activity. Stress bingo. I would like everyone to make a 4x4 grid on a piece of paper and write these symptoms that are mentioned on the screen randomly in the grid. Once you've written this, we shall start the game. Please let me know once you have finished writing this down. All right, has everyone finished writing all the symptoms?
Yes.
All right. So I will be saying one symptom at a time, and I would like you to put a mark on that symptom as and when I say it. Once there is a mark on 4 symptoms that are in a row, a column, or diagonally, please say bingo or put it in the chat. Either way, mention that you've completed it. All right. Shall I start? Okay. So the first one would be isolation. The second one is forgetfulness. The third one is hormonal imbalances. The fourth one is fear. The fifth one is stress eating. The sixth one is procrastination. The seventh one is feeling overwhelmed. The eighth one is stomach pain. The ninth one is irritation. The 10th one is skin problems. Has anyone finished the bingo yet?
Yes, ma'am. I have completed one column.
All right. So we can clearly see that these symptoms that I have named out are symptoms that everyone tends to experience at least once or the other when they're experiencing a stressor. Things like procrastination, forgetfulness, insomnia, they're not something that it was due to laziness. It's not something that's due to overly thinking about these things. Oftentimes, stress makes it difficult for our brain to be accessible to us. And we can clearly see that these symptoms that we are noticing on the screen are similar and same to almost all of them that everyone has experienced. All right. Now, how do we cope? How do we cope with these items? We have a lot of stress going on. How do we actually go to a point where we can say, we are moving on from this? We are actually going to finish our work and be productive. We're not going to be procrastinating. The first strategy that I can say is the 10-minute rule. The 10-minute rule is when we have to trick our brain. Many times our brain refuses to be on the same page with us. It notices and sees that we have so much work to do. Oftentimes we have like 70 pages for one chapter in an exam, and such that we have 5 chapters or 10 chapters going on. And we know how much time that is going to take. Just the thought of the amount of time that it will take tends to make your brain to shut down. And you start to unwant to do any of this work because it feels too stressful. You become overwhelmed. In this case, you must trick your brain to tell them that no, it's only 10 minutes. We're not studying for 10 hours or 12 hours, but only studying for 10 minutes. In this case, what happens is that once you've started the 10 minutes, you've set an alarm and you're doing it just for 10 minutes, you realize that you've started the flow of the study work or anything else for that matter. Once you've started the flow, you tend to go into a groove. You tend to go in a pattern. We notice that we are going to study one thing and then the next and then the next. And by the end of it, we seem like, oh, we've completed so much. And the amount that we did was seeming so much easier than I thought that it would be, that it took much lesser time than I thought it would. And all of a sudden, we are actually able to complete all the chapters required. The next would be to eat the frog. The most important one that I believe is there. To do the most avoided task first. Do the task that you hate the most. Do the course that you like the least. Do it first because biologically it gives you a dopamine reward. It makes you feel satisfied. It makes you feel actually happy that you have actually completed work. Once you've got it, the most annoying task out of the way, we can go on to the tasks that we actually enjoy. And that'll go in a much faster, much quicker way because you are in the mood for this. You're in the mood to do ahead. Now, what happens when you're already in the stress zone? One of the best ways to ground yourself back to reality, and one of the most simple ways, is the 5 4 3 2 1 method. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have already heard of this, but many times we're unable to remember to actually do these things. Do the 5 4 3 2 1, or in which order we're supposed to do. So, you start with, when you're in your stressful motive, start with the touch. Start with what you're sitting. Where are you sitting? What can you feel around you? Start naming those things one by one. After that, you will start to realize that there are other things. You're supposed to say what you can see, what you can hear, what you can smell, and finally what you can taste. As you're able to mention all of these senses, you are no longer dissociating. You're no longer going into a spiral of different stresses. We are back to reality. we have come back to the actuality of the way things are and not in a different zone and not in a different area itself. One of the most common things that has happened to me as well, and I'm sure has happened to all of you, is blanking out. It is the one of the most common forms of a stress showing up. But how do we tackle this? Why does blanking out happen? Blanking out happens because the amygdala has decided that the exam paper is a threat. And the hypothalamus has activated the sympathetic nervous system. And we are no longer getting access to our brain. We are now in flight and fight mode. To get out of this, we need to reactivate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is to calm ourselves down. When we are no longer faced with a threat, will we have the access to the information we are looking for? The first thing you should do is just to wait, to pause, not to keep thinking, what is the answer? What is the answer? I know I studied this, but what is the answer? Pause for 10 seconds. Wait. Take a deep breath. Try and tell your body it's time to relax. There is no need for adrenaline. There's no need for cortisol. We just need to relax. Tell yourself it's okay. My brain it's a little glitchy right now. Question. There is always something that's easy to answer. And finally come back to the blank out question. At that point, your brain and your body would have calmed down. You would have full access to your brain and all the information that you learned, and you will be able to answer your question. Over here, we can see that there is a meme. Me after the exams, when all the information I needed suddenly comes rushing in. And why does that happen? Once the threat has been removed, the PNS is back. The parasympathetic nervous system has relaxed your body, and we now have access to the brain once again. Why does this happen at the end and not in the middle? It is because we have not been able to remove the sympathetic nervous system from our system at that point. Doing this method will actually help your body be tricked in a way, and also to let it know that the exams, they're not a threat. Okay, it is difficult, it can be stressful, but they're not a threat. All right, this is another activity. Would you rather? I will be giving you two options. Please say it out loud and tell me which one you would rather do.
The Viva, maybe.
Oh, okay. We have one for the Viva. Is there anyone else who would choose a different option?
I would also
Assignment.
choose Viva, I think.
Okay.
A 20-page assignment is more convenient.
Ah, okay. We have one person for the 20-page assignment. I see. All right. So you can see that both options can be appearing to be stressful to one person, but not stressful to the other. Writing a 20-page assignment can seem like a lot of work, but going for a Viva and speaking to another person can seem much more stressful. So we have different options. We have different stressors. They cannot be the same for everyone, and nor should we make them the same for everyone. All right. Would you rather have 3 small exams in 1 week or one giant exam worth 100%?
One giant exam.
Oh, okay.
Three small exam.
Ah, okay. Anyone else?
One giant exam.
Okay. So
I
some
think three
people,
small.
3 small. All right. So some people are finding the 3 small exams multiple times in 1 week much, much more work than doing one enormous exam and getting it over with. Would you rather discuss your answers with your friends immediately or pretend the exam never happened?
Pretend it never happened.
Okay. Hmm. Anyone else?
Pretend it never happened.
I see. I think most of us tend to go for the second option, I can see. All right. Would you rather write the last question with 30 seconds left or finish early but realize you skipped a whole page? This seems to be a little difficult, I think, to decide.
First option.
First,
First option.
30 seconds left. I think the marks that you would be ending up to getting would be more with the first option in this case, depending on how many marks were assigned for the second for the whole page. All right. How do we stay mentally healthy? We saw a few strategies to see, but how do we actually stay in a space where we are able to move on from the stress immediately, or actually know how to deal with it on a consistent basis and not forget about it or get an anxiety attack or a panic attack in that sense, right? The first way is the immediate reset. Doing micro self kindness honestly seems kind of strange, but it actually helps a lot. There are studies backing this to show that cortisol levels have reduced and resilience during high pressure periods has increased tremendously. The stress is just a part of your brain trying to protect you. It is trying to make sure that you are not experiencing the threat unprotected, that you have the weapons to actually run away when you can. It is a way to tell yourself that procrastination, while it is not a very good method, it's a bodily thing. It is a biologically thing that you are unable to control many times. But how do we actually move on from it? How do we get the productive part out of it? This is how we do it. The micro self kindness. We are patient with each other. We are calm with each other. Breaking up prolonged sitting. Many times we are sitting for so long, we're just studying and studying. Our brain actually tends to inflame. It becomes larger. Sometimes you feel like your brain is going to combust. Sometimes you feel like your brain is heated up. It is actually because your brain is slightly enlarging. It is inflaming. Okay, using micro breaks, 5 to 10 minutes of a break, is very, very helpful for this. Moving around, letting the blood work in your body, not stay still, actually moving around helps tremendously with this. The next would be some daily habits. One non study activity per day. Now, this could be anything from painting to going for a jog, or maybe playing badminton, or doing some arts and crafts, singing, playing an instrument. It could be anything that is not related to your study or your work. It increases motivation, it reduces your stress, and you get to indulge in something that has nothing to do with one of the main stresses of your life. Another thing is wakeful rest. This seems kind of contradictory, but there is a very strong point of resting while you are awake and not just going to sleep. Setting a cutoff time is one of the most important things. It is not the same as taking a break. It's not like you're going to take a break for about half an hour and you're coming back for it. That is not how it is. It is not that you are going to be studying for 20 minutes, taking a break, and then coming back. That is not a cutoff time. A cutoff time is when you decide that you're going to study for, suppose, 6 hours in the day. You study for the 6 hours, and then that's it. You do not study anymore. You do anything else but study. Or maybe you decide that by 7 o'clock or by 6 o'clock in the evening, I'm not going to study after this. Whatever I'm going to study is going to be during the day before this. After this, I'm going to cool down. I'm going to go back to resting. I'm going to have my dinner. I'm going to do my walk. I'm going to talk to my friends, and I'm not going to study after this. It is very, very important for your brain. It not only increases the amount of information that you retain, but it also keeps you calm in a more healthy space. The third thing, like I mentioned before, the walk. The walk is very, very important for your physical body. The way your blood moves around and helps you go through your body is one of the main ways to help reduce stress over a period of time. A 30-minute walk in total over a few times during the week is something that can help your body move in a way that is much more healthy and much more prone to reducing stress. Okay, now we've come to another challenge, the emoji chat challenge. In this case, I would like you to just put in the emoji or mention the emoji that you believe represents the quote that I will be saying. What does your stress level feel like right now? Please let me know. I'm unable to see the chat currently. Does anyone have a apt description, or do none of the emojis seem to capture the exact way your stress levels feel like right now? I think for me, at least, the majority of the time, my stress level seems to look like this emoji right here, the one with the eyes going circles. What about your ideal relaxation that would be for tonight?
The tea and the music.
The tea and the music? I see. Okay. Anyone else?
Same here, tea and the music.
Okay. I think I would have to go for the bed. I
I would go to the bed too.
um, Everyone has different methods of relaxing and moving out of stress. It cannot be the same for everyone. And it's not a good idea to force it on another person either. Now, finally, for a few of our takeaways. Your stress responses are completely normal. They're biological. We have seen that the body is the one that causes a stressful reaction with physical symptoms. Your heart racing, your breathing becoming rapid, you're starting to sweat, you're all of a sudden senses are activated. You're paying much more attention than you thought. Not only this, it also causes different symptoms such as procrastination, losing concentration, having hormonal imbalances, eating too much, not eating enough, sleeping too much, sleeping very, very little bit. These are all normal. Dealing with them is the main concern and the main reason we have come here to look at these things. All right? Everyone struggles during exams. You are not alone at all. While they might not show it, everyone has a stress going on during the exam pressure. It is not a good idea to stress alone and keep yourself in that bubble without any coping mechanism there to help you. It is not a strange thing that you're going through this. It is not a thing that you are going through alone. And there are so many techniques that can help you make studying easier and not harder at all. You just need to find the one that works specifically for you. There are a lot of techniques, and techniques that work for some do not work for others. I myself know some that work only for myself and have not done a thing for my other friends. But you knowing which coping mechanism actually helps and actually works for you is the most important. Trying them out one by one and realizing which works for you, which one makes you calmer, is not a bad thing at all. It is just a process of elimination, getting to the point where you actually need to be. Your mental health matters as much as your grades, if not more. Your grades are a grade on your paper. And while I say this, I know that exams have a lot of impact on your career and your life. But your mental health, once it crashes, it takes years, if not like decades, to get back to where it used to be. And ruining that mental health is not much more worth than ruining your grades. Taking care of yourself, realizing that these are normal symptoms, is very, very important in your life. You have the exam pressure, but you know how to deal with it now. I have mentioned so many tools and so many methods to not only calm yourself down during a stressful situation, but how to get out of a blackout situation, how to get out of a situation where you're procrastinating too much, you're eating too much, what to do, how to get back to reality rather than dissociate into a different world entirely. These are some citations that from the studies that I mentioned in the PPT today. All right, thank you so much for listening on for so long. I would love to hear any questions that you have at all. I would love to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Anyone who has any questions can raise their hand and ask one by one, or they can put their question in the chat box as well.
Yes, the last slide of the PPT, of course. The takeaways. I'm so sorry. I'm unable to see the message in the chat at the same time as presenting. Would it be possible for you to say it out loud? How do you deal with mental health when you are okay? Uh, Bansi, would you be able to let me know what the question is at a later point? All right. Sharva, yes, I can let you know how to deal with mental health problems when you're burnt out. One of the most common symptoms of stress is burning out. You no longer have the energy to do anything. You no longer want to do anything. You are simply lying down on your bed, you're sleeping, and that is it. So, what happens? Okay, sorry. I'll answer this question and then move on. All right. So, what can we do during this period of time? During this period of time, starting small, we cannot be expected to do a huge leap to where we want to get to at any point in this. We have to start extremely small, and that could be as small as simply sitting up in bed, not lying down, just sitting up in bed. It can move on to maybe standing and then putting on a sock, trying to move a little bit, move your body a little bit. Now, when these things also do not work, the most common thing that I tend to use is listening to music. Music is one of my relaxing sense, and I am able to feel much, much better once I have a little bit of a tune going on around me. Once you find a slightly more relaxing thing that works for you, for some people that could be drinking coffee. Like you can't wake up in the morning without that coffee, you can't move out in your day without that. So you do one of those small items. You do not decide your day at all. You do not at all go to a point where you're like, I have to do this, I have to finish this work. You do not decide anything at that point. You simply get your body to move. You move a little bit and you get a little bit of a dopamine rush. You get a complete a small goal such as sitting up in your bed or maybe getting out of your room. It'll give you a small dopamine rush, but you have to decide that that is a goal for that moment and not decide on a goal that is slightly more long term or about a situation that is not currently in the present. All right. um, how can we manage parental stress? Is this with regards to your parents, or I'm sorry, can you be a little bit more specific regarding this?
Yeah, ma'am. So parents have certain expectations from us, like they expect us to top an exam or something like that, and they keep on asking questions during that period of time.
Yeah.
So how can I deal with this?
So there are a few methods that I have noticed that tend to work. One of the most important methods is to realize that this is your life. This is not another person's life. This is not your parents' life. As much as they would like to, place their expectations on you or place their desired career choice on you, it is not their life. You are the one who is going to end up living that life, right? And it is your career that is going to be put on at that point, right? So at this point, what we can do is let them know directly. This is not something that I'm doing right now. I have my own goal. I have my own life. Now, many times this is not this is not something that you can do. It is not something that you're able to do. You may be either feeling too shy or maybe the repercussions are too harsh. In that case, it goes through one ear and it comes out through the other. They may say a lot
Yeah.
of things, but letting it impact you is the worst part. When you're feeling stressed because of those expectations, we use one of our grounding methods. We use one of our relaxing things. We tell ourselves logically that this is their expectation, not my expectation of myself.
Got it, ma'am. Thanks.
All right. Um, after the takeaway one, okay, let me just see. After the citations, all right. Did you want to see something specific in the citations? How to keep up with stress caused from external expectations while struggling ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, having external expectations sometimes is unavoidable. It is not something we can control. But letting what affect us, choosing which stressor to deal with at first, is the most important part. We already have exam pressure in front of us. We already have a lot of other things going on in our life. Choosing which stressor to deal with at one given point is very, very important. having external expectations is their expectations. But while it is very easy to say all of these things, it's very hard to build it in. The only thing we can do is be consistent with telling ourselves that this is their expectations. This is their goal, not my goal. My goal is very, very different. How to deal with peer pressure. All right. Peer pressure is something that I have also experienced, and I know a lot of us have experienced over a large period of time. One of the most interesting ways of dealing with peer pressure that I would say is to distance yourself from those peers. If a pressure that is coming on you is not something that you agree with, the easiest way to move on from it is to not be in that vicinity, to remove yourself from that friend group, because clearly those peers do not have your interests. It can be very daunting. It can be feeling like, if I leave this friend group, I will have no friends around me. I'll have no one around me. Suppose you're in a college and you've already made that group, in your first, second year, and everyone else is already in a group. How can I make groups now? How can I make another friend group at this point? How do we get to that? But you have to realize that the nothing is much, much worse than the negative. When the alternative is to push yourself in a box and to place yourself in an area where you are being pressured to do things that you do not agree with, that you do not want to do, it is clearly not making you happy. If it's not going to make you happy either way, it might as well be unhappy in the way that you are not going to be doing things that you disagree with. And that is very daunting, and I completely agree with that. But taking a stand for yourself is very, very important. Okay, so Asthi, I thank you for mentioning this at itself. On second, I shall start presenting. All right, thank you so much for mentioning this. It is very hard to deal with a lot of other pressures especially when you have an innate biological thing already putting a lot of pressure on you in itself. Depression can have a lot of effects on you, a lot of effects that you do not want to deal with half the time. And it can a lot of times put in any effort that you're putting towards your external stressor, completely neglect it, completely nullify that effort that you're putting. So I completely understand what you're saying over here. Prioritizing your studies is not the same as neglecting your mental health. While you prioritize your studies, your mental health cannot be put on a backseat. It has to go at the same time together at the same line. It is, for example, what I tend to do to calm down at the end of the day, to basically reset my mind and my body after a stressful day, is to do a skincare routine at the end of the day, to do a routine that puts me to sleep at the end of the day. It is my nighttime routine. I do skincare, I go to sleep. I watch a video, and then I go to sleep. You have to choose a routine at the end of your day, after all your stressors, after all your prioritization of anything that you're working on. You complete that and you move on to a part that relaxes your body, relaxes your mind, and lets you do anything that you're setting out to do. You mentioned over here that your medication is difficult to then continue with once you are in that zone, once you're in that prioritizing of those studies. In this case, depending on when you have your medication, I would say to put alarms, and when that alarm rings, you stop everything. It does not matter what is going on, what you're studying on. You stop it and you take your medication. It is not something that can be ignored and put in secondary to your studies. Your mental health cannot ever be secondary to your studies. As I mentioned before as well, your mental health is as important as your grades, if not more important. It cannot be put on the side, something that I'll deal with later. First this comes and then that will come. It cannot be put like that. How can you stop comparing yourself with others inevitably? One of the main things to realize in this situation is to know that when you're comparing yourself to another person, it is still another person. Your experiences, your personality, it's not that person. While you may want a few characteristics that you see in another person, suppose you would like that friendly attitude, or you may want to take up something that they're doing with their hair or maybe with their clothing. That is not comparing, that is maybe, adopting a feature, a characteristic from another person. That is living the experience, where you're including the experience in your actual life, in your actual personality. But comparing yourself to another person is many times inevitable, but the main goal at the end of it is to realize that that is still another person, looking at maybe whether they have, a bigger house, or maybe more money, or better job, or better position, anything like that. You also have to realize one thing that a professor told me, which I took very much to heart, is that when you're looking at another person and their life, their job, their family, their career, you also have to look at the other part. While one part may be very shiny and very attractive, there can always be another part that is not as shiny. Now that could be something as small as not talking to their family as well, or maybe not having a very good relationship with any friends, not having that kind of level of commitment with anyone. Now these things can shift very differently, and that may those things that are not there in that person's life, that they may much be wanting from another place, is something that you have. You may have those friends that you can rely on at any given point, even if you have not reached the level you are. Comparing yourself in one aspect cannot be the only way. You must compare the whole picture. If you're looking at it, only one thing is not the way to compare it. They may have worked very hard in this one area, but they have lacked in a lot of other areas which you have. So looking at one aspect and then sticking to a comparison between only those things will not lead you anywhere. How to deal with addiction? Addiction is very, very difficult to move on from. I personally know a lot of people who have experienced addiction, and they have not had an easy time getting out of it. One of the main things that you need is honestly support. You need a lot of support from not only your friends, family, but that support keeps you. It gives you the motivation to continue through the leaving of your addiction. And by addiction, it could literally be anything from coffee to tea to any kind of drug. It could be a variety of things. It cannot only just be a drug. Addiction does not just mean one thing. Addiction could also just be doom scrolling at a long period of time, watching movies continuously at a stretch and not being able to stop yourself from that. Addiction could also be stress eating so much that you're unable to stop and causing yourself health problems because of that. So addiction in this case would be the most important thing to pay attention, would be to get the support. Realize that you're in too deep. Not even if you're not able to get yourself out of it, tell someone, I need to get out of it. I want to get out of it, and I would like some help for that. Do not go to the people who put you there in the first place. If you are going through that, they will not help you out of it. They will help you deeper in it, and that is not where you would like to end up, I think. All right. Of course, I will share my LinkedIn on the chat at the end of the session. So you may please connect with me at that time and connect with me through that. Is there any other question that anyone else has?
I wanted to ask something.
Yes, please.
So, in like all of us, we follow a daily routine. Like since most of us are maybe college students, we go to college and all that daily routine. So, most of the time we have lack of motivation to go through our day. So, how can one deal with that stuff?
Okay, I will give you an example of what I did in my college. One day that I realized that I had absolutely no motivation to do anything. I had skipped all my classes that day because I just did not want to leave the bed. My main goal at that point was to make myself feel better. It was not to go to the class. It was not to do any study work. The only thing I was thinking about at that point was to improve my mood, which would subsequently improve my behavior and hence improve what I do with my behavior. My actions would change. I decided that I was going to dress up. I was going to eat some really amazing food. I was going to go talk to my friends. We watched a movie. I felt amazing by the end of it. Once I did the things that actually, brought my personality back to me, brought myself back to me, I was feeling motivated on its own to do a thing that I wanted to do. And whether that means working or completing a deadline or going for your classes or going back to a daily routine, you can do it at that point. Many times that daily routine also tends to become very stressful in itself. The idea of waking up at 8 o'clock, going for 6 hours of classes, coming back, doing a group project, going for meetings, doing any homework you have left, completing a deadline. After that, you're going to sleep. Your day is full already, and the thought of just repeating that over and over makes it very stressful in itself. So one of the main things to do is to switch up your daily routine every now and then. It cannot be a repetition. It cannot be that you're doing the same thing over and over. It becomes very boring. You become very dull. You're no longer not changing, improving your mind, you're improving your mood. I had mentioned in the presentation that doing one non-study activity in a day helps you be a little bit more active, a little bit more motivated to do anything that you're doing. Your stressors reduce, your cortisol goes down, and you have a much higher resilience to anything else that you end up experiencing, any other stressor that you might end up having to face. So maybe going outside every now and then. In this case, my method of reducing my cortisol and doing a hobby was literally to watch a movie. That is all I did. It was not even a full activity. It was not a blown out painting session, or it was not a sports activity. It was literally to watch a movie, something that would actually make me feel better, make me bring myself feel like a little bit more, motivated with some energy.
Thank you so much. That will help me, hopefully.
All right. Are there any other questions that anyone has?
Guys, we'll take two more questions. If anyone has something, they can unmute and ask.
How to maintain balance between social media scrolling and studies? Doom scrolling, one of the many addictions of the Gen Z. I would honestly say to switch off the phone at that point. But it is very difficult to put your phone on silent when you know you're going to get a call from someone, when you know you're going to be approached by someone through your mobile. So keeping it aside, but then also having access to it and the social media at the same time can be pretty challenging, I would say, when you're trying to focus on something that is slightly less interesting compared to your phone. One of the main things that I would try to put out would be to put a screen timer on that app, on the app that you tend to be scrolling on, which helps a lot in the sense that you have a limit on that day, that you have about 2 hours in that day. Or one of the main things that I have learned recently is the work mode on your device, where you can decide to switch off that app but have your phone still active during that time. So when your work mode is on, you will still get calls, you will still get messages, you will be still connected with the world, but you can choose which apps, social media, to stop work using or stop in access to you during your studies at that time. So you're able to keep your phone aside for that much time, study, do as much work as you can, knowing that there are no notifications blowing up, there are no other distractions showing up on your phone immediately, and it's not buzzing and it's not trying to call for you at that point. At that point, it's just you and your studies that you're working on.
So I think there are no more questions. So, ma'am, thank you so much. It was a really insightful session. We got to learn a lot, and I hope many of us from here would be more confident and would be able to deal with stress in their daily life. So thank you so much. Especially the techniques that you told about 10-minute rule, eat the frog, and also to deal with when you're blank out, so we can deal with that 10 minutes break, micro breaks. I usually practice that micro break technique in my daily life. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for that. It was really good having you here. And also thank you everyone for attending the session and staying till the last moment. It's not easy, I know. Everyone has their schedule, has their lectures. Still you have come here and attended the lecture, I mean attended this session from Hatch. So thank you so much, everyone.